Welcome back again to the Chasing Tone podcast. I'm Brian Wampler, and again today, Blake Weiland is with me, and we talk about a couple of different things. Go off topic just a smidge, get right back on topic with guitar stuff, like we kind of always do. So if you have any questions or comments, make sure you email podcast@wamplerpedals.com, and let's jump right into the show. Well, hey, Blake.
Brian, hello.
How have you been?
Pretty good. Good. Going crazy, but good.
So I hear you're working on your amp today.
I kind of am, sort of. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why it's doing what it's doing. Got a fuse issue that I'm trying to sort out, but
I've got a few issues myself. But,
a few issues.
Yeah. Oh, you said fuse issues.
Yes, exactly. But I'll figure it out. I'll get this thing sorted.
Well, I've got a good topic for you today.
All right. Tell me, what's your topic,
Ready?
Brian?
So, all of us, let me back up. There's millions of pedals out there, right? Well, probably not millions, maybe thousands.
There might be millions.
At least, okay, so there's a gigantic amount of pedals out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, historically, like we've had the phaser, the flanger, the delay, like types of effects.
Yeah,
has grown immensely over the past, I don't know, what, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, well, that's probably, like it's been exponential in the last, 15 years, for sure.
Right. So I'm going to ask this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think we'll probably have to stick to the basics because we can't name every envelope filtering, flanging, delay, tremolo effect,
Right.
Because there's all different kinds of things going on. So out of the well-known basic types of effects,
mm-hmm.
I'd like to discuss with you which ones you will absolutely not use and which ones I will absolutely not use. So basically,
I got you.
Which pedals are pointless?
Like for me, yeah, I got that. Which pedals are pointless? That's a I don't know about pointless, but for me, a lot of them can be pointless. That's for sure. The first thing that comes to my mind, and this is probably people will try to get me tried for treason for this, I think, but I have no use for wah in my life. I can't make it sound good. I've heard people make it sound awesome, but I just sound like a guy who tries to use wah too much. Every time there's one in front of me, it's like wah, 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 wah. It's not good. Wah is useless to me.
What about just leaving it in one position, just a fixed wah, if you will?
That's okay. But then my thing of that is why do I want a giant wah in a fixed position when I could probably achieve a similar effect with a 1 unit pedal with, all the options these days, or even an EQ pedal if you set it up, appropriately. You could kind of get that similar effect and only take up one space, or you could, have a cocked wah and have it take up spots for 2 pedals. So why? That's my thought on it.
Yeah, but I think that depends on the type of music. So if you're playing funk, you're probably going to use a wah more often, though, right?
Oh, of course. But I don't play funk, so for me, it's useless. And I like listening to funk. It's funky.
And you're more of a power pop player, right? I mean, the Biebs. You do a lot of Bieber covers.
Right? I'm a firm believer. Yes.
Katy Perry covers. I know you're in a Katy Perry cover band.
I'm in a Katy Perry cover band. I also really like to cover Kylie Minogue. I'm big in that world. That's what I do. Yeah. There's not any aggression or distortion in anything that I do at all.
Well, when I'm playing Skrillex, there's no, seriously. So I would have to say wah for me as well is something that I just okay. So let's say that I have a gig, right? And let's say that the guy who runs the band is like, "Hey, dude, we're playing Man in the Box this week,"
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm in that situation, then I'll bring a wah And if I would use it for a set, but it wouldn't be on the pedal board. Like it'd be off to the side, cobbled together, so I could get it unplugged as soon as possible.
Yeah.
That's just like but the type of stuff that I would normally play doesn't really call for a wah, generally. So I mean,
that's me too. I think that might be it. Nothing I play would have a wah in it in the first place, and so that's why I don't need it. But there's other things too that I don't necessarily have a total use for, but I'm warming up to them, and we've talked about this a little bit before. But I generally don't need compressors. I usually have enough dirt stacked together that it's compressing just fine as it is. But
I can
I'm warming up to the idea. I'm warming up to the ideas. Jay Leonard J gave me some ideas to try, and they sound really fun. And Jack DeVille just came out with a compressor called the Big Payback. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but it kind of it does regular compression stuff, like what you would want, but then it takes an old studio trick of the like dynamic expansion idea, which is kind of the backwards from what a compressor is, and it put it in the box. And so I'm kind of curious to try that out, which is kind of different than what we're talking about. But yeah, compressors I'm warming up to, but I currently don't own one.
You don't play a lot of clean though, do you?
Not really. Not a lot of clean, and if I do, it's usually like drenched in reverb or delay. So I don't know. I just have never like thought I really need one, but I have a feeling that when I get a nice one, like a mini Ego maybe, that I'll go, how did I live without it? There's a good chance that I'll have that epiphany.
Well, you don't really do much of picking the chickens though, do you?
No, I'd like to though. I like that kind of playing. I don't know if I have the skills to do the chicken picking, but I really like listening to it. So I might fall in love.
So with me, with compressors, a lot of it's dependent on how loud I am. You know what I mean? Because I think if you can't turn up very loud, it adds a little bit of feel. Especially like if you can run it, if you have a compressor that's just not like all squash or nothing,
Yeah.
And there's several different to do that, but I like to have just a little bit more feel on clean stuff, or even on if I'm just barely dirty, I'll run a little bit of compression as well. Which is that's the reason for the blend knob on the Ego, is because that's what I wanted. If I was building something for me to use, that's what I was going to do.
Right, exactly.
So that was the whole idea behind that. But there's other things too, like a flanger. Never will I need one. Just I don't need it.
I didn't think so either, but I think we talked about this last week. I got the Chase Bliss Spectre.
Yes.
That's taking a flying leap into, I don't like flangers, to here's the ultimate flanger, basically.
Right.
And I've come to realize that my thoughts and preconceived notions over, like you said, ones that just have like speed and depth.
Right.
This is a whole nother beast. It really can do very musical and pretty sounding things that you would never associate with the word flanger. Right. Or it can get wild, like what you do think of. So that pedal I'm actually super in love with, and up until a couple weeks ago, I would have been with you on the flanger, but this has changed my mind. So
see, I think that really comes down to what you play. So if I'm playing out somewhere, then being from Midwest Indiana, that basically means we're playing top 40. Usually top 40 country, with some Southern rock mixed in whenever possible.
Right.
And hoping somebody from the audience will ask for something better. But so it's basically like it's like playing Skynyrd all night.
Yeah, you wouldn't need any flanger on that.
Right.
But this pedal actually, now I should take a step back. You might actually use it if you were like a serious nerd. Because you can do some things where it just thickens up your sound, where you wouldn't even know that that's what the effect. Like if I just heard it I
Right.
heard some guy using it, I wouldn't know that he had a flanger on. It just
Mhm.
like thickens it up and gives it some heft that you wouldn't normally have, which is kind of interesting. So you might be able to get away, but there again, I wouldn't purchase a pedal of that level for your general top 40 country. No, you don't need it, but you could use it.
Well, maybe I'll try it. I don't know.
Um,
Phaser is something else. Like, I mean, for me, it's like everything other than dirt, delay, and reverb, and compressor and a tuner. Like that's all. That's really all I need as if I'm playing out somewhere.
right.
Now,
What about if you're recording or doing things like that?
See, I don't do like any serious recording. So if I'm doing like the stuff that I have done, like I'm trying to think, the last thing I did was, okay, so on the YouTube videos that I have been putting out this year, for the first, I don't know, 23 or 4 of them, this year, I wrote like a little ditty, and that was the opening intro. And so for that, it did, let's see, I had I think I had four different guitars on there, 4 or 5 different guitars. No, see, 1, 2, I had 6 different guitars. So, and there was some tremolo on there, but I used a plugin. And that's just because it synced up perfectly with the metronome.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
So yeah, so even like in that situation, the easiest thing for me to do is just grab a plug-in and a couple clicks and get something good enough.
For
Now,
that,
if I was
for that purpose, yeah.
Yeah, so but if I was like doing a lot of studio stuff, I probably would have a gigantic pedal board, 4 feet wide by 3 feet long or whatever.
Yeah, I think for me, having a wide variety of pedals is most useful in a studio environment. Like that's where it's most fun to like swap things in and out and try different things, because you can really hear what each thing is doing in the studio. You may not be able to tell as well live on certain things.
But but I'm sitting here thinking, like if I'm just fiddling around with stuff, there's a lot of I'll use a lot of fuzz. Like I was talking today about working on a fuzz. So I'll just beating around on a guitar for fun. Like I'll use stuff that I probably would not use in a band situation. And it's just because, well, I can't say I'd throw a wall in there. I definitely wouldn't put a wall in there. Like I just don't need that. But fuzz coupled with overdrive or something like that. So ton of gain, but it gets all creamy.
Yeah.
And but whenever you stop playing, there's a huge amount of hiss. And I'm not a fan of noise gates, so I don't know.
I'm not either, but I do want to. We talked about this before and why we're not fans of noise gates, but I do want to bring something up. A listener sent me. His name's Cliff. He's a local guy. He sent me a MXR Smart Gate because he heard us talking about how we don't like gates.
I have one of those as well. Yep.
I like that thing a lot better than any one I've tried to date.
It's a pretty good one. Yeah, it definitely is pretty good. It still has the main flaw that I don't like. Like your note will choke out at some point when you're when you're holding it.
Yeah, before you want it to.
Yeah.
This is what I would use that pedal for. Is I would just like throw it in a bag with a battery in it, and then like if you could just not, if you were in such a noisy environment at a gig or something that you just had to do something, it's like, okay, well let's try this, because there's just too much noise. I would never keep it on my board, but I would keep it like in a gig bag with a patch cable and a pedal and a battery in it. And,
I think if someone's using a lot of dirt, I think noise gates, especially in a band situation where you're not critically listening, like no one in the audience is critically listening. I think something like that would actually be really handy because in between sets, if you have a couple of dirt pedals on, you're going to hear some hiss, especially if your amp's dirty at all. or especially if you have a fuzz at all, then you're going to hear some hiss.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it's a really useful. It's changed my tune a little bit. Like I used to be no noise gate ever type of guy, but this smart gate is just that. It's smart. You can dial it in a lot easier than you can like the one knob decimator or something like that.
Yeah, well, I haven't used the decimator before, but yeah, the MXR actually is a pretty good gate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, so yeah, let's see.
Plus,
there
it
was
uses
another
new old
effect.
stock capacitors.
Does it?
No. Not at all.
I was like, does that matter?
It uses capacitors that values have drifted dramatically over time. It's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
They're not even close to the same as what they were.
That way, that's how you know they sound better.
That's right, because they're different than what they were originally. So you know it's good.
Exactly.
There's another effect that I can't say I don't have a use for because I really like it, but I haven't figured out how to put it in a song or use it musically other than like making big ambient weird things. Is a harmonic tremolo. I like regular tremolo and I can figure out where to put that in songs. But the harmonic one is a little weird for me. I like how it sounds. I just can't figure out how to use it musically.
It may be one of those things that it's just, when you're beating around on a guitar and you're just having fun. It's not a tool for songwriting. Or, I'm not saying it's not. But I'm saying for you, maybe it's not the type of thing that you're going to use in a song, but it's fun to mess around with.
It's really fun to mess around with. And I could probably see it in some sort of like explosions in the sky, real big reverby thing. But yeah, as a general thing, I bought it and at the store because like this sounds so cool, and now I'm like scratching my head like, how am I gonna use this? I just haven't figured it out yet, but that's probably one that I would say is not necessarily for me, but sounds rad.
Right.
I'm just kind of looking through some stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, I use chorus. I'll use if I have to. Not a big chorus fan either. Actually, I take that back. If I have the luxury of running 2 amps, for fun, then I like a good stereo chorus in that setup. And then maybe a little bit of chorus at the front end that's at a fast rate to get sort of a pseudo Leslie effect. If with the right chorus, that can be a cool effect.
Definitely.
But not a big fan of like the 80s rock chorus. You know what I mean? Like I guess I was back then, but not now.
I'm 100% with you on that. I have a chorus. It's actually piggybacking on our last topic, the weird cheap pedals. It's the DoD FX65 stereo chorus, and I use it just exactly like you described. If I have the luxury of running 2 amps, a little of that. I'll either do the pseudo Leslie thing or I'll set it real slow, so it just sounds enormous. Like it can make you hit that with a drive and going into a widespread stereo chorus setup with this very slow speed and kind of the mix low. You can have an enormous sounding guitar tone that doesn't sound like chorus. Right,
it's just like spreads everything. You know what I mean? More of a stereo effect to the ear, I guess.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So, other than that, there's really no other type of pedal. I mean, tremolo.
Not general, general stuff. No. I mean,
why use a tremolo when you got a volume knob on the guitar?
Oh, actually, that's a good point. Another thing I don't really have use for, volume pedal. I don't really need one.
I have one, but I don't use one.
It's just like, I can see the use, but for me, if I'm going to do a big swell or something, I can do that with my knob pretty easily.
Right. I think it depends what you're doing. I mean, there are some licks that you could do with your volume. You could do better with the pedal and not the knob just because of timing issues.
Yeah. Or imitating a pedal steel or something.
Yeah. So, just something where you need more control and you're doing things with your fingers that you have to pick. You know what I mean? And it's just, it makes it easier just to use your foot. But Like at least for me, that stuff is so few and far between. It's not worth putting on a board.
Right. Especially because
You know?
so many of them, not all of them, but so many of them are just tone suckers too. Like,
Yeah, well, the passive ones generally are. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I mean,
Is there anything
you
you can
can-
do about that?
yeah, but and they actually solved the problem. They made I say they, Dunlop, I believe, made a active volume pedal. It kind of
okay.
fixes this problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, the passive ones, basically you need to run a buffer before and after it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the general gist
Before
of it.
and after. Wow.
I like to, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you probably could get away with running one before,
Mm-hmm.
but depending where you have it set, you're going to screw with impedances and stuff too. So I don't know, just to be on the safe side, I like throwing a buffer after it.
Gotcha.
You know, but I'm also like in as far as like pedal design and general pedal design goes, I like to make sure that if the pedal's on, it's a low output impedance anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of for that reason. So, you know, if you have 16-foot guitar cable or something, and that's the last pedal in the line, I want the least amount of now high end roll off basically. I want
Right.
the least amount of effect from the impedance as possible, which means that I mean, if you look at like the schematics of our stuff, you'll notice that it's pretty consistent with how they end in the circuit, so to speak.
Right.
I mean, you know, there's something there to ensure that the impedance doesn't get screwed up at the tail end.
Gotcha.
You know,
Right. Because depending on what stages you ran through and everything, that could change.
yeah, because I mean, you know, the next pedal you go into is wanting to see a high impedance. Sometimes, I mean, at least not too low of an impedance.
Right.
Or I mean, like, I can't say this what it wants to see. You can change the sound of it depending on the impedance. You know what I mean? Because you start messing, like it starts messing with EQ and stuff of like that first stage that the next pedal sees. And I mean, sometimes it's a cool effect and sometimes it's not a cool effect. So, you know, like for a fuzz face, we've talked about this a bazillion times, you know, to using a fuzz face, you probably don't want to stack it. You probably are not going to want to stack it with something that has a low impedance output, you know, like a compressor or an overdrive, or I mean, you can, but it's going to get a little more high end, a little more fizzly, I guess, for lack of a better description.
Yeah, it's kind of it's like a more biting and like aggressive type of sound.
Right, right.
Lots of fuzzes are that way, and I mean, a lot of them are kind of fuzz face based.
Yeah.
But yeah, that way you were talking about this, I know you've probably covered this ad nauseum, pretty much everywhere on the internet. But I don't really have a buffer, like standalone.
Just just
I've
a
been
single buffer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of use an EP booster as a buffer a little bit.
Just like a Unity.
Yeah, exactly. And so sometimes I do that once in a while, but I've been considering getting one just to have around. But there again, like I said, I'm usually playing with so much dirt that it doesn't seem to matter that much. But where do you like to stick a buffer in your chain exactly? Because I'm kind of thinking like, well, if I'm going to do that, I got a fuzz that I really like that definitely doesn't play well with buffers. So it can't go there. Some of my drives like them, some of them don't. It's just like, do you just put it as early as possible in the chain without it messing up everything else?
Yeah, because I mean, from all the tests that I've done, anyways, I mean, you can use a second buffer at the tail end, but I really don't see any value. Like the value is so small; it's just, you know, minuscule of putting two of them in there, unless you have some other pedal, like a volume pedal, for example, that might screw with the output impedance before it goes to the amp. You know, again, we start talking about more high-end roll-off and crap like that once you're going through all that cable. Because the cable is kind of like, for every foot, there's a degree of capacitance. Well, I mean,
Yes.
for every unit of measurement. Technically, you know. Anyways,
Yes.
you lose
Cables have
yes. You lose high end the further you go,
Mhm.
but that's with higher output impedance. So the buffer really it kind of negates that. It doesn't have nearly the amount of effect, and you really need. Trying to think what the number was. I didn't really start noticing a difference with the buffer until I was like 120 feet or something with a normal
Oh wow.
cheap cable. Yeah, that's when I'm like, probably need another buffer around here. So
Interesting. So here's another question since we're talking about cables. And I've never asked anybody this. I don't know why. When we were recording, one of my amps, the studio I was at had speaker cables built into the wall, so you could run the cab in the other room, and we could kind of like record live. If that makes any sense?
Yep.
So one of my amps absolutely hated using that. It wanted a short speaker cable, and it actually responded better to a long instrument cable with running a buffer or something than it did running a long speaker cable, which is backwards from what I was reading, because I was reading things like, the amps put out enough power that you can drive a long speaker cable easier than an instrument cable.
Usually, not always, but usually.
It sounded terrible. It sounded like really flabby and like super bass heavy. I cranked the treble like all the way, which I never have to do on that amp. It was just really weird because it was opposite of everything that the internet told me. Didn't know if you had any theories
everything on the internet's true, so that can't be right. Maybe you just aren't smart enough to run the speaker right. I mean,
well, I wouldn't be surprised. I have done a lot of things incorrectly in my day.
You did hook up the speaker cable to the effects loop return, right?
Yes, I did. Isn't that where it goes?
Every time. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
There's no effects loop on this particular amp.
Well, there's your problem. You couldn't connect the speaker. No.
I don't know. Do you have any theories as to why that might be, or am I? It's just weird a bunch of the other amps were fine. All the other amps that were there were fine except this one.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been like a weird output. I mean, I don't know what amp it was or what transformer it was. My guess would be just a funky output transformer that doesn't like to see that load on it.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're just converting all that signal that you're pushing through tubes into a different type of signal. I mean, it's still AC, but it's restructured in such a way that it'll move a speaker. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I mean, it still is an AC signal, so the cable is still going to have an effect on it.
Right.
So yeah, I personally there are differences in speaker cable. There really is. A 4-foot sounds different than a 1-foot, and so for sure a 40-foot is going to sound different than a 2-foot.
Yeah.
Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes, I mean, just really depending on the output transformer and the quality of wire and like all this other stuff. It may not be that big of a deal, but apparently with this particular amp it was.
Yeah. With this one, it didn't like. I mean, it was not really a big deal at all. I just moved the amp into the ISO booth. I couldn't mess with it on the fly like I wanted to, but it wasn't the end of the world. I just ran the instrument cable to it, and all was fine. I kind of forgot about that, and we were talking about long runs.
Right. Well, I have an isolated, like a little isolated room. It's about the size of a closet. And I have both a speaker cable going to it and also a guitar cable going through it because of that situation where maybe an amp just sounds like complete poo whenever you're running, that much speaker cable. So that way I can just throw the amp in there and mic up the amp, and all's happy.
Do your thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, this went in a completely different direction, but that's fine. I think it's still valuable.
All right. That's kind of our thing.
Yeah, but so far it's all been related, though. This is what's amazing. It's all been guitar related. When you're running long runs, I've seen those like SGI boxes, I think is what they're called. what are they called? Radial makes them, I believe. They're like they like convert it to where you can plug like an XLR in, and then reconverts it at the end back to the whole point is to be able to run really long cable runs if you have to.
Right.
But do you see any advantage of that versus just running a good buffer? Like you said, you got out to 120 feet. That's pretty much as far as most people are going to run.
I guess it really depends like how finicky a person is. I mean, if you want to put it on an oscilloscope, I mean, you're probably going to see stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But not the 99.9% of us, I don't think you're really going to. In a blind test, you're probably not going to notice that much of a difference.
Right. Because a buffer is way cheaper and easier.
But I'm also saying this, without ever having played the radio product, So I really can't give you an honest opinion of that.
Right.
Just knowing what they're doing there with, regards to shielding and stuff and cabling.
I mean, I played with it. It worked great, but I couldn't tell a huge difference. But I wasn't in optimal listening conditions either. But like I couldn't tell a big difference between the two. So I didn't know I also didn't know quite as much as I know now. When I was doing it. So maybe I would pick up some difference. But I didn't know if you'd messed with it at all.
I haven't, and I haven't even had anybody ask me that before. So apparently that's not a very common practice with guitar players. I don't know.
I never said I was a common guitar player. Or a normal human being.
You're nowhere near average, right?
Well, I'm very below average in skill, and very above average in gear nerdery. So I don't know what that makes me.
Oh, I don't know. All right, so we went from talking about what pedals we'll never use to speaker cables. Awesome.
Yeah. But at least we didn't go from talking about pedals we'll never use to like parenting tips. Like,
that's true. But
that's happened before.
There is next week, though.
That's true. I think we've officially completed the most guitar-related Chasing Tone podcast that I've been involved in to date.
Great. Now we're going to have to start over.
We can't be... People are going to start expecting this out of us. We can't have that. Oh, no.
We can't raise expectations. I mean,
no, we must lower them. I don't know what the company philosophy is over there at Wampler, but here at Tone Mob HQ, my philosophy is always set the bar lower.
Set the bar lower. Never exceed expectations.
Never ever exceed.
That way, no one expects more from you.
Yeah. That's right. And if you see the bar, you can reach it. Just take it, pull it out of position, drop her down. Always be a little worse than you were before. That's my goal.
And with that point, that's a good place to end this week.
All right. Sounds good, Brian.
So thanks again for listening. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you email podcast@wamplerpedals.com. And you can also check us out on Facebook. Check out Wampler Pedals Tone Group. It's probably the best place. You can always go to the Wampler Pedals page. You can also check out Tone Mob on Facebook as well, or you can email Blake directly at info@tonemob.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next week.